Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Drapers Connects. My name is Graham Moran, and I am the Associate Editor of Drapers. Drapers Connects is our series of digital events and virtual content that aims to connect the fashion industry via Q&A discussions, panel talks, and live broadcast webinars such as this. So thank you all for joining us and taking part today. If you are watching live, please feel free to ask questions throughout via the Q&A function that should be at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to put those questions to the panel and have them answered today. So in partnership with SMSA Express, today we will explore how UK brands and retailers can crack international expansion with a focus on the Middle East. So I'm very happy to welcome today's experts who are joining us from around the world. We have Fadi Zaghloul, who is the Chief Operating Officer at VogaCloset. We have Paul Alger, who is the Director of International Business Development at the UK Fashion and Textile Association. And we have Mohanad Kayat, who is the Global Director of Business Development at SMSA Express. So thank you all for joining us, and we're really looking forward to today's conversation. As I said, today's webinar is in partnership with SMSA Express. So Mohanad will kick us off with a short introduction to the company and what they do around the world. Over to you, Mohanad.
Thank you very much, Graham. Yeah, the company was founded in 1994, started as specialized in courier business. Over the years, the company added a lot of business segments, talking about freight, logistics, cold chain, e-commerce, mail forwarding services. In 2015, we started our expansion in the region mainly. So at the moment, we have presence in 16 countries. Mainly we cover the Middle East, the Gulf, the GCC, and the Middle East. We maintain several accreditations in terms of ISO for quality management, environment, health and safety, customer care, and training department. We're considered to be one of the largest companies with the highest reach, providing custom-made solution or tailored solution to our customers in the Middle East and abroad, and reaching every corner in the region to make sure we provide our customers with best experience. Generally, we always take care of having our customers' shipments in safe hands. We have our own gateways with in-house clearance facility, and generally we tend to do our work in the region by ourselves. So this is a quick brief about SMSA. And we have presence in USA, in Hong Kong, in China, in South Africa now, and we're selling globally, mainly focused to our region.
Perfect. Thank you, Mohanad. So to start us off, I'm sure everyone has exhausted the conversations around the pandemic, but I wanted to draw attention to the fact that the shift to digital shopping channels throughout the pandemic and beyond has, of course, created opportunities for online growth, and that's particularly prevalent overseas. So today we'll be discussing some successful strategies and plans and advice for brands and retailers who are looking to expand internationally. As I said, we will focus on the digital hotspot that is the Middle East, and we'll explore how local partnerships and collaborations can help brands and retailers to navigate the nuances and the logistics and the cultural differences of new markets, because not all regions are the same, as we will explore today. So, Paul, I wondered if we could start with you. At the UKFT, you help British brands and retailers to grow and expand internationally. This might sound like quite a big question to kick us off, but if a business is looking to sort of look overseas, when, where, and how do you advise them starting? When is the right time? Where is the right place? And how do they kind of get those strategies going?
Thank you, Graham. That's a very big question, and I'll try not to make it too big an answer. I suppose when we look at the Middle Eastern markets in general, we tend to look at the Middle East, particularly my background, as more as a wholesale player than as a retailer or actually online. But what we're seeing at the moment is that we look at the Middle East as being two markets. So we see a very strong domestic market in most of the Middle Eastern countries for high quality luxury children's wear, lingerie and evening wear, for example. But we also have to look at the Middle East as being a major international retail hub for tourists, people coming from elsewhere. And so those markets tend to work very differently. There are a number of key factors that we traditionally expect to see in the Middle East. So for example, in the UK and in Europe, we often look at a country by country basis. But as I think will become clear as we go through the conversation, most parts of the Middle East, with a few exceptions, tend to trade with each other. There's a huge interdependence of trade. So lots of key players that will be based in the Middle East, that may be based in Turkey, for example, in other countries in the region that trade with each other, and particularly in the Middle East, because obviously the use of Arabic as the language, for example, these sites, these retailers tend to trade massively across borders. If we look at the UK's top 10 export markets, then the Middle East is not in it, interestingly, and that is perhaps more to do with the way that we tend to look at the figures. So we tend to look primarily at goods that are physically being exported from the UK into the Middle East, whereas we know that retailers, certainly the larger UK brands, will tend to ship into the region direct from wherever their manufacturing is, be it India, China, other parts of the world. But there are a couple of key things to say, I think. So we tend to think very much of the United Arab Emirates as the go-to place, but it's important not to forget the importance, the economic importance, but also the political importance of Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, because they are really the main drivers in this market. This is where a lot of the money comes from. So that drives quite a lot of the demand. And again, when we look at luxury collections and luxury evening wear, for example, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi are the key players in those markets. The other thing I think is worth saying, and this is perhaps more from a retail point of view than online, but it could have implications here as well, is the United Arab Emirates, Dubai in particular, is very important for tourists coming into the region to buy from retailers. And they already attract a large number of Indian luxury consumers. So UKFT is working with the Department for International Trade on some research on India. And what comes out of that very clearly is that the Indian market is growing, as we expect it would, but a lot of luxury consumers don't buy in India. They often get on the plane and go to Dubai. And as we think now, we're not talking anymore about COVID, but we are still talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. One of my predictions is that we will see lots of Russian customers start to travel to Dubai in particular to source garments of fashion that perhaps they may find more difficult to source at home, and that will have a knock-on impact on online businesses in the region too. So I'd say overall, where do they tend to go? Strangely enough, from a wholesale point of view, most companies find that Paris and Milan tend to be the places where they meet their wholesale customers from the region. We've not seen the development of a major international fashion week in the region. To our surprise, I have to say, we've expected one to come along. Those that have come along have not tended to be particularly successful, and certainly not cross-region. But we are seeing signs of quite an important uptick in interest from UK companies in the region. And finally, from me, I would say UKFT is working very closely with the UK government on a UK GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council trade agreement. So we're still in the very early stages of negotiating that agreement, but we are fairly optimistic that an agreement will be secured in the next year or two. And that we see as having a major benefit for UK exporters, because they will then be able to sell to the region on a duty-free basis as long as their goods meet the rules of origin, which will mean they will need to be made in the UK primarily. But it's an exciting time, I think, for the area and for the region, and we are seeing a lot more interest from exhibitors and exporters wanting to sell into the Middle East.
Excellent, thank you, Paul. Fadi, moving on to kind of your perspective, which is slightly different. VogaCloset is a UK-based online platform that sells, I think last time the number was over 400 men's, women's and children's fashion brands online directly to shoppers in the Middle East. So your focus is the sort of the domestic digital shopper. From that angle, kind of generally, before we get into the nitty-gritty, do you have any sort of top-line advice for brands and retailers on how to kind of find those best opportunities internationally, as VogaCloset have?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Middle East, so there's echo, sorry. Yeah, so the Middle East typically has young, tech-savvy population that are really very well educated about the Western brands, and they have a good appetite for Western brands. And they are, as a nations, they have good disposable income. They are consumers that know about the Western brands and you know, have the appetite and have the means to spend to source those Western brands. So historically, VogaCloset, what we've done, we offered those brands to the consumers in the Middle East. It has, you know, it comes with some challenges, which I know we're going to discuss a bit later on, but the consumers in the Middle East are hungry for Western fashion, for nice labels that come from the West. And they are really tech savvy. There's very good internet penetration. You know, internet penetration rates in the Middle East is one of the highest in the world. The time spent engaging on the social media is also right up there. So addressing those consumers in that market will have a lot of benefits by being able to reach those consumers that are really hungry for those brands and want to access those Western brands.
Great, thank you. As you said, we will definitely, some of those opportunities you speak about can also be the challenges, which we'll come on to later, I think. Mohammed, onto you. SMSA works very closely with lots of brands and retailers, helping them expand into new markets. Why, to our audience, why is people in the audience that are thinking about growing internationally, why do you think that is a very good next step for brands that are looking to grow their presence overseas?
Definitely with the advanced technology we have today, the expansion is no longer as difficult as it used to be in the past. If you look at the old distribution channel, a lot of that elements get eliminated. I'm talking about the classic distribution channel: exporter, importer, agent, local wholesaler, retailer. At the moment, any brand can put themselves into any market as long as they have the right marketing and logistics partner. And definitely every business, every retailer in UK or anywhere in the world are there to grow their business and to have a quality growth. And I think that's what makes the Middle East a good region to look at for this growth. The rise of the e-commerce in the region is incredibly high. And as Fadi said, you have generally a good buying power. And then we had the fashion sector, especially, is the second largest segment in our region, with more than 20% share of the e-commerce size. So beside that, you have, if you look at the median age in our region, it's too low. If you look at it country by country, it will be the median age rating between 20 and 35 years. And almost 30% of population in this region age is between 15 and 29. And this is a major sector in e-commerce trade. Those people, this generation or this category, like they were born and they are digitally native. They are on the smartphones from day one. If you look at the internet usage in our region, it's way higher than the international rate. Internet penetration in our region is around 67%, where the global rate is in the range of 56%. And the time spent on internet every day exceeds 6 hours in this region, with a good buying power and a good basket size. The basket size is in the range of 150 euros or 150 euros, if you like. And the cumulative annual growth is high. It exceeds 16%. So any retailer in UK look at this recipe, it will make it attractive to penetrate this market, because they will secure a good base with a good forecast of growth, at least for the next 10 years. And those are published. If you look at platform like Statista, it talks about these aspects. So generally, this market is great to start with expansion for any retailer in UK.
Great, thank you. You've taken all the questions out of my head now, so I don't know what else to ask. But as I was going to, as you very well put together there, I think they are the kind of the perfect recipe that we were going to talk about as to why the Middle East is so ripe with opportunity. Is definitely you know, the internet usage in the region is super high. So there is already a sort of they're ready to shop online. They're ready and waiting. It's an opportunity there. As you said as well, Mohammed, it is a very large market, and it is being driven by a younger generation, those Gen Z and millennials between 15 and 29. They make up such a large part of the population. So not only are they're digitally savvy, but they're also that kind of younger shopper that we already know in the UK and in Europe and in the US loves to shop online. So it's not that different over there. And of course, as you outlined, we've also identified that these shoppers have a huge interest in fashion, particularly in Western brands and Western trends. So there's that kind of balance between they're online, which also probably means they're on social media. So things like Instagram and likes is also huge in the region. So it's kind of a perfect storm or a perfect recipe for fashion brands and retailers. I can see both Paul and Fadi nodding. Why don't we start with you, Paul? Is this kind of what you're seeing? Do you agree? Are they the kind of the reasons why you would recommend to certain brands and retailers that this is a good market to explore?
Yes, I think the market is a good one. I think what's interesting about it is, on the one hand, if I look at the wholesale companies that we work with, the biggest challenge is identifying retailers because they tend not to be easy to find, and they don't always travel where we would like them to travel, and sometimes they don't always want to buy what we want to sell. But generally speaking, I would say what is interesting about this market is if you look at it across the GCC market, it's a very big market that speaks the same language and has similar, not identical, cultural sensitivities and requirements. So you can build the scale in this market fairly easily with a relatively modest investment. And because we tend to see in this market that there are key players that go across the whole region, it is fairly quick for a lot of our larger UK brands to actually roll out a very significant presence in the marketplace. There are a few challenges, and I think a couple of the challenges are dispelling some of the myths. So one always tends to assume that because these tend to be hot countries, only summer collections apply. Well, that's not entirely true, because certainly anyone that's ever been to Dubai or to Riyadh or Jeddah will know that most buildings are very kept very cool, very air conditioned. So, you know, there are a number of challenges, and similarly, one of the areas, and I mentioned it before, is that dare I say it, sexy lingerie is one of the things that we sell as a country very substantially to the Middle Eastern market. So you can't actually put all of the retailers and all of the consumers into the same bag and say these buyers only buy in this way, because there are lots and lots of exceptions. But outside that, the language is the same. Obviously, Arabic is widely used right across the region. And English, I think, to pick up Mohammed's point, is really very widely used by the younger generation of consumers. That is a good thing, because it means that they are more likely to gravitate towards UK international Western brands, because we know that they like these brands. The UK has generally reasonable reputation in most of these markets, not all of them, but most of them. But the other challenge, I suppose, is that because consumers are very savvy, they know what everything costs around the world. So the one thing that you can't easily do is convince the Middle Eastern customer to pay a lot more for something if they think it can be found more cheaply somewhere else. So we do see very high levels of sophistication in consumers' awareness of UK brands and a willingness to engage with those brands, particularly through local bloggers and influencers, for example, rather than Western bloggers and influencers. So it's worth looking, if you were launching an Instagram campaign, it's worth looking at what other local bloggers and influencers do. And those may not be cross-region, they may be by country, because there are differences in tastes. But there is the ability with the right investment to grow this market quite quickly, and online is a very significant part of that, because you can reach customers so quickly in a way that you perhaps couldn't in most other markets.
Great. Fadi, is this? Do you agree with everything we've said about this kind of younger, digitally native, socially driven customer? And I also wanted to ask, as someone who is selling very successfully in the region, do you have any advice on, you know, what appeals to these shoppers? What kind of brands do they like? What are they drawn to? What is doing well on VogaCloset?
Yeah, absolutely. So I fully agree with Paul and Mohammed. They both hit the nail on the head. That size of the market is there. And what appeals to consumers in that part of the market, consumers are more and more looking for a fashionable item and for a good deal on something. So what appeals is your whole value proposition, whether that be it on one segment of the market or the other. The consumers are more demanding, are more knowledgeable now, and can have a broader view of what's on the market, and they are looking for a whole value proposition. So what appeals is, you know, a good garment or a good item, reasonably priced, and a good service. So whilst historically, you know, like a 2-week service used to cut it for consumers, it's not the case anymore. They want the order to be on their doorstep very quickly. They need to have the option to return the item. So the market is maturing on that front. Customer expectation is also increasing for service and for service excellence, for the right reasons, obviously. So yeah, it's the whole value proposition that appeals to the consumers. They are, as I said, consumers looking for good brands, Western brands, trendy goods, but also the whole value proposition has to be appealing for the consumers.
I think that's really interesting because, as we know, in the UK, customer expectations are just getting higher and higher. So why wouldn't they be the same everywhere? Which kind of nicely takes us on to what are some of the biggest challenges with international expansion, but particularly in the Middle Eastern region. One of the ones I wanted to talk about particularly was payment methods. Not every country, but lots of countries, lots of regions have different preferences, and the Middle East is no different. The kind of traditional preference is for cash on delivery or payment on delivery. So once upon a time, customers would order their items online, and when they were delivered, they would pay the courier in cash. Now, more and more, they are paying in card, but it's still on delivery. I can only imagine kind of the headaches this can create, particularly if you are a British brand who is used to operating in a certain way. Fadi, could you talk us through some of those challenges, whether it's the changes you have to make to your website or how you have to deal with stock, and particularly
Absolutely.
I was also really interested. We spoke about it before, how this sort of slightly changes the dynamic as well, because the customer isn't necessarily, they haven't paid any money yet until it's in their hand. So it can kind of change the shopping behavior a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. So cash on delivery, which historically, we still call it cash on delivery. Historically, it was cash on delivery. Now it's moved on to be a payment on delivery. So the consumers pay when the driver turns up at their doorstep. This remains to be the preferred method of payment for the consumers in the region. I would say the majority of the transactions that we see are sent on payment on delivery basis, meaning the customers at checkout, they just select payment on delivery. We ship the goods to them, and the driver calls them. It has to be obviously a delivery by appointment because the money has to be there, or the means to pay has to be there. The driver meets the customer at their door. At that point, the cash is handed to the driver, and the goods are delivered. So this effectively creates, and it's still the dominant form of payment in the Middle East. So for you to successfully meet the full potential, you need to be able to offer cash on delivery for the region. It creates, some challenges. You need to change your checkout to accommodate a new form of payment. You need to change your distribution system. So effectively, there's a form of due diligence that you have to do on consumers. As you quite rightly said, Graham, the consumer is not committed to the purchase. They still haven't paid any money yet. So they can turn around at any point of the cycle and reject the order, at which point you then have to pay, obviously, to fulfill the order, to ship it all the way overseas, to pay the duties at destination, and then the order comes back all the way to the UK. So it turns out to be a costly affair when that type of transaction happens. So you have to have some mechanism to do some due diligence on the customers before you effectively give credit to that customer with a certain amount. So you have to have some, like profiling systems and validation and verification before you can then ship the orders overseas. And then obviously your supply chain has to catch up. So you need to work with the right delivery partner to be able to trust them with your product, for them to take the products and do their best to deliver the orders. They have to have a robust a cash collection mechanism. They have to have a robust system for recuperating the cash back to your account in the UK. It has to be a frequent cycle, so you have to agree on the frequency. There must be reconciliation processes with the cash between the orders that are delivered and the cash that was collected. So it just creates that extra bit of processes that should go around the cash and delivery to be able to to trade successfully. And unfortunately, the cash and delivery is an unnecessary evil in that region, because you have to offer that option to the consumers for them to buy your product. And especially with newer brands, people choose the cash and delivery as sort of an insurance policy for them. So if it's a new brand coming to the region, cash and delivery gives them the assurance that this order is going to turn up on my doorstep, and at that point I will pay. And you see, I mean, a good percentage of the customers will receive the order and will do the payment, but there still remains an element of consumers that change their mind halfway through, or maybe place 2 orders because they decided to add another item on the order, so they place the other order, the identical order with an extra item on it. So all of those things, will become a bit of slight headache that you need to deal with and address for you to trade successfully and keep your operating costs within certain controls, obviously.
Yeah. I think also something which you didn't touch on there that was going to be the next point, but it does come hand in hand, is that as well as payment on delivery, there is in some areas there's issues with addresses and deliveries, and I know, Fadi, you told me about the way that you guys have tackled that is by changing the kind of the address input, so you can literally pin where you are, and it helps delivery people find you when maybe an address or a postcode doesn't exist. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so addresses in the Middle East are, they are there, but the infrastructure is not fully up to speed yet. It's something that the countries are working on actively, but until this point of time, consumers can sometimes write their address descriptive as to how to get to that address from a certain landmark, or typically what you find is they just put the city name and a phone number because they expect someone to call them and capture the address on the other end. So addresses is a challenging thing to collect, and that obviously, when you work with logistics, it creates problems further downstream for your logistics partners, because they have to then call and capture the address for every delivery before it gets delivered, so their cost to serve goes up, and ultimately that will somehow make its way back to you. So what we've done is at checkout, we've offered the consumer the option to pinpoint their location on the map, so we capture a GPS location for the consumer. That filters down across the supply chain and streamlines the process. So instead of us having to call when the goods arrive and capture the address, it just takes that pain point away, and the consumers, we have the consumer address. We've also worked with the Saudi Post. They have a national address system that they've introduced, which really simplifies the address into 4 letters and 4 numbers. It's easy for consumers to memorize, and it just achieves the same thing, basically, pinpoint accuracy for the point of delivery. So we've added that on our checkout for consumers in Saudi Arabia, which is, like the biggest market in there, to be able to enter their correct national address, and for us to filter that across the supply chain to streamline the delivery to the consumers. So addresses remain challenging. There are things that can be done about them to try and improve the experience overall.
Perfect. Mohamed, we're talking about deliveries and addresses. Obviously, this is something that SMSA are experts in. Could you tell us how you're helping brands and retailers to overcome these challenges?
Yes, that's a great question, because the challenges are always there in any business. This is the nature of life. Generally, we support our abroad customers with wide range of service beginning, and so generally we have the capability to bring the material, their products from the country of origin to our region, store it in bonded warehouse, then deliver it, and those undelivered shipment, we manage also the reverse logistics for that, with complete integration with them. Talking about the cash on delivery, being one of the largest companies in the region, we developed to have a robust payment network. So generally, our last mile system can accept cash payments, credit cards payments, ATM cards payment, wallets. So we developed our system to accept multi methods of payments, and to make sure we always do our best to do the delivery from the first attempt. That would include a requirement of address verification. So we use all means of communication. We attempt to call the customers. We use the mobile apps, chatbots, just to make sure that the customer is there and the payment will be there. So it is the last mile process. Besides that, being a company responsible of high number of official documents, deliveries in several countries, so generally we have fresh data, and we developed our systems to even read like what's the best time to call this customer, so and which service centers such customer visits. So all these together would support our customers abroad to increase the delivery rate for their shipments, besides the solutions that we provide for their undelivered shipments or their reverse logistics, their returns. We provide several solutions for those, either to consolidate it or to put it in our warehousing system and do refulfillment when it's required for similar item in the local market. We use geotagging. We are integrated also for major IT platforms such as Shopify, Google. So all these together just give the support to our customers abroad.
Yes, definitely. Just whilst I remember for our audience watching live, do remember that you can send in some questions for our panel, which we'll, if we don't cover them throughout, we'll get to them at the end. Thank you for that, Mohammed. I think what that really says to me is a point I mentioned at the beginning, which is one piece of advice I think here is if you work with experts in these areas, in the different regions, that's definitely one way to improve your level of success, because you're working with people who know what they're doing, who are, as I said, experts in those local areas, and can really assist. I know that's Fadi, we spoke about this when we were preparing, that kind of having that kind of reliable collaboration has really been part of your success. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, I mean, if you were to address the market successfully, the barrier for entry is relatively high. You have to have the cash and delivery, you have to have the Arabic language, you have to have the right networks of logistics established, you have to have the right content, the right marketing channels. So as Paul said, there's influencers that are country specific. There's so many different, points to consider to enter that market. So for you to trade successfully, I think you should work with the right partners and operate and offer the customers the same value proposition that they are getting from the domestic competition. Otherwise, you're always going to be unfavored against the domestic competition. So this is why, for example, we suggest working with the market specialists. We work with SMSA, for example, for logistics, but also VogaCloset irons out all those barriers for entry in terms of, listing on VogaCloset means that you have access to the cash on delivery, to all our, tools to verify the customers, to control the supply chain, to recuperate the cash. And we work with a market specialist like SMSA that gets the order to the customers in a pitch perfect, customer experience. The relation becomes a UK relation, seamless and easy, with a company that's been trading in the UK for more than 10 years. And we manage everything to do with exporting the goods and returning them back all the way to the UK should the goods, become undelivered or unwanted returns. So this is potentially a way to test the market, to see the potential of your brand in that market, to access the consumers. So we have 2 million plus monthly active users on our platform. So to have access to all of those, it's a good way to start accessing those consumers, test your brand, see how your brand fares in the region. And yeah, it's this way, again, you have access to everything else that that we have today, and you'll be on par with all the domestic players from the region that offer the consumers all this convenience of cash on delivery, quick delivery, seamless final mile integration, and seamless deliveries and returns, obviously.
Yes. Paul, I saw you nodding. Is that kind of working with local experts and collaboration? Is that something that you feed back to brands and retailers when they come to you for advice?
It is. I think picking up on Fadi's point, having a local partner is pretty much the key to success. And there are a number of different reasons for this, but one of them is that local trust, because as Fadi has identified, companies in the region know who to trust. They know who is going to deliver. They know who works well. They will have an understanding as to which consumers will pay when you arrive at the doorstep and those that will not. So many of the problems, I suppose, that we would traditionally look at when you have a payment on delivery system, for example, can be handled by a local partner. And as Mohammed said earlier on, the local consumer expects a very quick turnaround. They may want to change sizes. They may buy 3 of something and send 2 back. So this is all going to be very difficult without a local partner. And the local partner, I think, smooths across all of the various issues that have already been discussed, but also will be able to advise on some of the trickier issues that relate to the region, such as certification, for example, because that does vary from one country to another. You often find that there are certificates of conformity that are required for certain products, for example. A local partner will know which ones those are. Certainly, I know my colleagues and I at UKFT spend quite a lot of time working with UK companies that are shipping direct, to identify where they can go for that certification. If they're selling 1 or 3 items, for example, direct, that does sometimes work. And also on the labeling side as well. But actually, I think if we look at most UK brands that are doing well in the region, they have a local partner. They have one person in one part of the Gulf region that manages all of their arrangements, all of their shipments to the region. And if I can give you a bit of an anecdotal story, my last trip to Saudi Arabia was about 12 years ago. And I remember sitting down with a very well-known, very large UK retailer and his local Saudi partner. And he said to me, I'm not going to name the retailer, he said to me, one of the biggest challenges we have is that we have to deselect 70% of the core product that's suggested by London and supplement it with other goods that are right for the marketplace, because the market buys differently. And so you often find that, again, the local partner is able to help you to identify those goods that are going to sell into the marketplace, whether it's, I mentioned sexy lingerie earlier on, but also, longer sleeve lengths for certain markets, for example, really important. And also advise on things like photography, because there are certain parts of the region where you cannot show children's faces, for example, in advertising. So you have to be very careful about the messaging as well. So a local partner is key. And I think that's going to involve an investment in money, which I think is, everybody understands, but also a substantial investment in time, because the Middle Eastern markets you tend to build trust in the Middle East over a very long period of time, usually quite a lot of socializing and spending time together. So I wouldn't mind betting that Fadi and Mohammed will say to me that a large part of the work that they do is actually building networks in the market where they know that they can trust.
Great. We have a number of questions come through from the audience that I'll put to the panel. Maybe I'll pick on some people and see if we can get those answered. I think this one is best for you, Mohammed. Somebody has asked, how does SMSA check what time the customer prefers based on historical data, or is this given as an option to the consumer beforehand? How do you kind of, that kind of sounds quite complicated, the delivery operations. How do you manage that?
In fact, as I said, today our IT technology is advanced to a point that can identify to us what's the best time to call the customer, what time the customer visit one of our business centers, and we use multi-tools to reach the customer. Those customers who have SMSA application, they can easily identify preferred time, and we do physical calls, we do use chatbots. So definitely all these tools are there to support successful last mile delivery.
Great. Somebody else has asked, is it important to offer product pricing in local currency, or is the Middle Eastern customer happy to shop in foreign currencies such as dollars or pounds? Does anybody want to take that, Fadi?
Yeah, I'll take that. It's very important to offer it in local currency. Customers will need to see it in the local currency to understand how much they're paying. Especially, for example, for the UK, the pound is a bit variable compared to the local currency, so it just makes it that bit more difficult, and it just means that there's another concern for the customer and less likely for them to convert if you're displaying the non-domestic currency.
Yeah, excellent, great advice. Somebody else has asked, what would you say are, we kind of touched on it, Paul, but what would you say are some of the main differences in how goods should be marketed to the consumer there? Are there any other sort of cultural nuances that the audience should know? I know, Fadi, when Paul mentioned the different types of imagery that you can use, it isn't a case of you can use, if you're promoting a brand, you can't always use the same imagery that works in the UK. Is there any sort of advice you have there?
Yeah, so there's some cultural differences as to what we deem appropriate and what the consumers in the Middle East deem appropriate, and therefore you should be careful about the content that you offer to those consumers, the content that you lead with on your pages, how your brand comes across, the imagery that you put on your website. So there is a process, for example, for us at VogaCloset to edit the content, to modify the content, to push the things that will be appealing to the consumers, and the things that we don't think are culturally appropriate, we edit those so we don't end up showing them to the consumers in the Middle East.
I also thought something that we haven't really talked on yet, but it's a similar question around marketing. Seasonality is different, and also peaks are different. Could you tell us a bit about any advice you have around that?
Yeah, so seasonality, I mean, the climate there, they don't get as punishing winters that we get here in this region, but still there are some regions that do actually have different climates to the 50 degrees all year round. So there's different climates in different regions, and you need to know what products to push at what point. So come, for example, February, then the weather in that region becomes a bit warmer, and there's no point trying to push jackets or heavy winter products to the consumer. So there's different trading calendar compared to the UK, and you should be wary of that, and you should plan your merchandising to the region differently than how you merchandise to the UK. As Paul said, we're pushing product that the consumers will not want to buy, then it becomes, a difficult thing to sell to the consumers, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, Graham, that we haven't talked about yet is modest fashion. And there are some good modest fashion companies in the UK, but actually, if I look at most of the designers that we take to Paris Fashion Week that do scarves, they sell scarves as fashion accessories to consumers in the Middle East who wear them as an item of modest fashion, for example. So again, when you're looking at certain markets, certainly like, for example, Saudi Arabia, we see that handbags and accessories and shoes are the big sellers for a lot of UK brands, because those are the items that you will see in the street, even if a lady is wearing an abaya, for example. But that covers her down to her. So you'll see different trends, but that's not to say that there isn't a market for other products in the region, because inside the home, inside social circles, people are still very, very keen to buy very elaborate, very beautiful, and I would say very high quality garments as well. So on the commercial side of things, yes, there is a fast fashion element to a lot of the Middle East markets. But in certain parts of the market, we see there is a real appetite for luxury goods with a capital L as well. So those are very popular, both for tourists going to shop in the region, but also locals.
Definitely. And we have another question for Samsa, for Mohammed. For a new brand that hasn't explored the Middle East yet, what advice do you have, and how can you help them to expand and find success?
Yes, we are here to support their presence in the region, mainly from logistics perception. However, we consider ourselves to be sort of e-commerce enabler, providing services that aid those customers abroad. We provide multi-language customer support service, acting at first level of contact, along with marketing services in more than 450 business centers in our region, with huge footfall and toll-free numbers. So generally, we can support in the marketing. As I said at the beginning, I recommend the Middle East as a region, and normally we consider ourselves to be consultants for our customers, to provide them everything they want to facilitate their new market penetration. Besides that, you have the presence of a company like VogaCloset in UK can be of a great support also. Saying that the 450 business centers marketing services is something that we did with Fadi in the past, and it was a good experience, I believe.
Thank you, Mohammed. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for our kind of lunchtime slot, but thank you to everyone that watched live and has sent in questions. Any that we didn't get to, I will make sure to connect you with the relevant panelists and have that question answered for you. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Fadi, thank you to Paul, thank you to Mohammed, and thank you to SMSA Express. And we'll see you on the next Drapers Connects. Thank you.